Alrighty, so with that, this video then is it's a video that I happened to find with our friend Mohammed Hijab speaking to a gentleman in Speaker's Corner. And he's going to make some, as he often does, some fairly big claims here. And again, we can critique that and see whether they are backed up. One thing I'll notice, I'm going to put it out there, and you'll hear it actually in this video, is you've got to listen to this carefully, and you've got to listen to what is being said by people in the sense of, are they backing up what they say? Because one of the tactics you'll see very early on here, and we'll talk about it and we'll stop it anyway, is, hey, I'll make a claim, you refute it. No, this is not the way you have a rational and reasonable and intellectual level of a dialogue. If you make a claim, you give us the reasons why. So you give us your ontology, i.e. what is it you believe, and why, your epistemology. What is it that gives you the reasons to believe whatever you believe? You don't say to me, hey, I could say to any Muslim, hey, the moon is made of green cheese, refute me. That's not the way it works. I need to tell you why I believe it's made of green cheese, and then you can challenge my reasons. But of course, as we'll see, that doesn't necessarily happen. So when you're ready, Stops.
I'm the one who's presenting a lot of the point. I want to what you seem to be your line of argument is that something is so impossible or something so amazing. No, fine. I want you to, I'm going to give you one chance. I'm saying to you now, me talking about something metaphysical like heaven and hell is the same, has the same epistemic weight, and I'm going to say this to you right now.
Can anyone please explain to me what an epistemic weight is?
I'm just going to bring that up. I was actually going to bring that up earlier. I've got a general idea, but I want to make sure that I represent it accurately. So before I go and launch into that, let me just see if I can see it here. 1 second for me. I'll give a. Hopefully, I'm accurate with this. It's basically the reasons why carry a certain amount of credibility, for want of another word, or weight. So his claim is that the metaphysical is so his reasons for believing in the metaphysical have the same weight as, I think he's still going to say it, I think you've stopped it, he hasn't quite got there yet, but talking about a scientist talking about quantum mechanics, I think is what he's going to say there. So his reasons why are as strong or as much weight as a scientist talking about quantum mechanics. I believe that's what he's going to say there.
Because for me, epistemic weight is nonsense. And when I tried looking it up, I couldn't find anything. So, I mean, I understand what he's trying to do, exactly what you are saying. But this is not something that if you go into the literature and you enter, you mentioned this somewhere, that everybody will understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, I think he's put two words together that might have been used in common language, but as you say, I don't see it a lot in philosophy per se. And again, if you're a philosopher and you can point to, or if you're not a philosopher, even if you're somebody knowledgeable on that, you can give us a link to that where it's talked about more in depth, then feel free to do that. But that's essentially what he's saying is, my reasons why for believing in the metaphysical are as strong, or as one can be as confident about them as the other.
That's what he wants this to be, exactly.
Yes, exactly. But let's also see now whether he justifies that. But listen what happens now. So play a little bit further and you'll see what happens now.
We've just been accused of being racists because we are picking on poor Muhammad.
Why we
has the same epistemic weight as a quantum physicist talking about something which is happening on a subatomic level.
Well, just go a bit further, just 2 seconds more.
Refute me.
Okay, there we go.
Fine. So just because you don't like,
refute me.
Yeah. So it carries the same weight as a quantum physicist talking about something on the subatomic level. And of course that's nonsense. But again, what we don't hear there is his reasons why. So the first question to ask there, obviously one needs to get used to doing that, is why do you say that? What are your reasons for making such an outrageous claim? But what does he say there? Refute me, i.e. I'm going to make an ontological claim. I'm not going to give you my epistemology. I'm going to claim that I have epistemology, but I'm not going to give it to you here, and now you need to refute me. And so that's where you need to jump in immediately.
judgments don't mean much to me. If you say, well, in heaven, it's pathetic, this and that, no problem.
It's on the ethical, moral.
No, but I'm just saying, just because something is seemingly unappetizing,
It's not healthy having that. Having that
I don't care about logic or content physics. I care about just general ethical, moral reasoning, which today you'd be more than happy to talk about how you go strict by the scriptures. So on the same learning, when someone says, oh, you know, you're going to have these entities that have a soul, you have the free will in heaven, but
why is that? Why is it logically invalid? Tell me why it's logically invalid.
It's not about being logical.
So what's the problem? So no problem. Alex, let me tell you something.
The same way,
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Saying that men will get 72 virgins.
Yes.
What will women get?
And let me tell you what they'll get.
They'll get 72 men.
Well, let me tell you something. Let me ask you a question. Do men and women desire the same things in this world?
Okay, stop it there again. Stops. Notice what happens there again. You've just got to pay really close attention to what some of these guys are doing. I don't know that they even do it consciously. It just comes out of the mouth without even thinking. Okay, I'm going to tell you, let me ask you a question. This is not the way you answer a question. You don't answer a question with a question. And so this guy obviously asked, do men get, do women get 72 men? Okay, I'm going to tell you, let me ask you a question. No, that's not the way to do it. And notice also, unfortunately, the guy said, oh, I find this uncomfortable. And I have to be honest, as far as I can tell, and I'm happy if it stops for somebody else to point it out, Hijab does rebuke him for that, and rightly so, because he doesn't care if you find something uncomfortable. Everybody finds something uncomfortable. That's a subjective claim. You need to give reasons why you find something uncomfortable or immoral or whatever the case is, because that's what I think this guy's trying to say. But obviously, Hijab interrupted me a little bit, but he's I don't know if you heard it there, but he said, oh, I find this uncomfortable, and then started to talk about the virgins. So you've got to give reasons. But of course, again, we're already into this guy trying to defend or refute the claim that's been made by Hijab, and Hijab at this point has not given his epistemology at all.
Friend.
Oh,
David, how are you doing, my friend? You're right. You're looking good today, man.
I saw you after you had your scuffle down the bottom there.
Yeah. So no. Do men and women?
Are all males the same? Are all females the same?
No, I'm asking you a question.
There is
Don't answer. Please do me a favor, Alex. Try and answer questions, because right now what you do is you answer questions with questions.
There are.
Okay, that's the irony. That's of course the irony. Alex, please don't answer a question with a question. But if you rewind like two minutes ago, that's exactly what he did. I'll answer your question. Let me ask you a question. But Alex, please don't answer a question by asking a question. Please look in a mirror. Consistency.
Same sexual desires?
No, I'm not saying that there are. That's not my question.
Oh, of course there are.
Look, Alex, Alex, do me a favor. Look, because you've evaded. You've evaded.
You're trying to tell us what a male and a female is. There is enough variance there to suggest that we don't really know.
But Alex, what you've done there, twice I've asked you a question. Like, let's be fair to each other. Please. Alex, please. Alex.
Well,
Listen to me. You've asked me about 5 or 6 questions, yeah? And I've answered them very directly. Yeah, no problem. Now I'm asking.
No, you haven't answered anything directly.
I was going to say, has he answered anything so far?
Not a thing. Not answered a single thing directly. He hasn't asked him 5 or 6 questions. He's made a couple of statements, that's true. And Hijab hasn't responded to them, but he certainly hasn't answered anything directly yet.
Just 1 or 2, and what I want from you is you to really consider what you're saying. The first thing you said was that I don't feel exactly words. I don't feel comfortable with this. What that constitutes in philosophy is exactly an aesthetic value judgment. So in other words, because you see something and it's distasteful for you, wait, hold on please, that you're now willing to sideline it or invalidate it. Now, this is fallacious reasoning. What I'm asking you is, have you got any? Wait, hold on. Before you continue, because you have to allow one question to be asked.
Stop it there, stop for a moment. I just want to ask the question. And again, I'm asking this question rather than saying it's my, it's a statement of fact. But I don't think an aesthetic value judgment is a. What did he say? Did he say it was a fallacy? I don't believe it's a.
I also thought so. I also balked at this because for me this is total nonsense. Okay, he is now at. What? How can I see where he's at from the time so that I can go? Okay, let me go back to. I hope I'm hitting it to here.
102, and what I want from you is you to really consider what you're saying. The first thing you said was that I don't feel exactly what I don't feel comfortable with this. What that constitutes in philosophy is exactly an aesthetic value judgment. So in other words, because you see something and it's distasteful for you, wait, hold on please, that you're now willing to sideline it or invalidate it. Now, this is fallacious reasoning.
No, definitely not.
Well, I'm asking the question out loud as well to the audience as well. Is it a fallacy to have an aesthetic judgment, value judgment? I agree that it's what he says. I don't feel comfortable. That is an aesthetic value judgment, but that's not a fallacy in and of itself. If he had no reasons, then possibly that's the case. But it doesn't seem in and of itself that it's a fallacy. But again, we can look that up. I'm not aware of it just being a fallacy on its own.
Well, the fallacy would be if he would say, I don't like it. So there I can definitely agree with Hijab on this, where if somebody says, I don't like it and therefore it's wrong, that doesn't matter at all, because it's not a moral judgment that we're looking for, but a factual one. And if somebody, and I think the whole discussion here is on the virgins thing, then I don't think it's a fallacy if somebody says, well, I'm uncomfortable with it. Okay, cool. Who cares? I mean, it's part of the thing and we're discussing it. So I don't care whether you're comfortable with it, because we're not judging anything based on morality, but on facts. So, nah.
I'm asking you is, have you got any, wait, hold on, before you continue, because you have to allow one question to be asked, then you can answer it. What I'm asking you is there any way you can, using your reasoning, show us how the precepts, the concepts, the descriptions of heaven as per the Quranic narrative is logically invalid? Can you do it?
Yeah, stop it there. Okay, you have, yeah.
This is not the way you do it.
Yeah, this is a shifting of the burden of proof. You prove it wrong. I've made an ontological or metaphysical claim. I've not given my epistemology or any reasons. You now need to refute this, and this is asked about back. But what he could ask here, and of course it's easy for us to watch afterwards. But what he could ask here is, okay, tell me about, give me more of your ontology. Tell me more about what you believe and why about this heaven. And then Hijab would go into something. Then you can, and I think you pointed it out. It was pointed out by philosophers the other night when I was listening. If a Muslim claims that God is perfectly moral, perfectly merciful, and has perfect judgment, those two are contradictory. You can't have those two. So if you're claiming those two attributes of Allah in this particular case, then you can immediately say no, that God does not exist by virtue of a contradiction there. And so one would need to elicit from Hijab more about this heaven that he believes in, because then you can look into and evaluate, well, what is his ontology? What is it that he's claiming about this heaven? Because just heaven on its own, what the hell does that mean? Maybe he's got an idea in his mind, and I've got an idea in mine, which is maybe heaven is what Einstein said, which is just the whole universe. The universe is heaven. So tell us a bit more about it.
Well, I have a problem.
Can you do it first?
The fact that I should, when it suits you, or when it...
Can you do that? Can you do that?
In certain circumstances, I should recognize my moral, ethical qualities, and then in some instances, I should completely ignore them, because the scripture is, what we know, and we don't have the capacity to actually appreciate it. So we have to complete logic.
See, you haven't answered my question.
So going back to what you say, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a very
Most
simple
things are
example.
stories in life. Tell me the answer.
And you said yourself, we're going to be tweaked as we enter heaven to accept what it is for what it is.
Alex,
Sorry, I did not understand what he was saying there. Did you pick it up?
No, I didn't either. I think he's sort of, this Alex guy is waffling a bit. He's probably got some point that he wants to make here, but he's certainly not being, particularly clear about it. So maybe he'll get to clarify it here, because, I have to critique him in the sense that I'm not understanding what his actual critique is at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So it's not only me. Okay.
No. I know what you're saying right now.
So when we go to heaven, when we have these 70 virgins.
72, according to the hadith in Tirmidhi, which some muhaddithin have said is weak, but majority say is strong. Go ahead.
You said they have soul. You said they are as like us as we are, but they don't have a free will except us.
No, I didn't say this.
Okay, let me ask you another thing.
I know, hold on. I didn't say. No, because you just said something I didn't say.
Okay, that's not what you said. That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's say I go to heaven, another female.
No.
Why is that this?
Because no. No, hold on. That's different. Hold on. You've asked a question. If you want to ask a question, you have to wait for the response. The Hurul Ain described in the Quran, which are the virgins or whatever you want to call them, really, it's women. And the discussion's always been about women. But let me tell you something you didn't know. Let me tell you, I'm pretty sure you don't know this. Let me tell you something interesting.
Why you know everything?
Pardon? Let
You know everything.
I don't know everything. Do you know? Let me ask you a question, because here you've talked about Hurul Ain, as the Quran says, but what you haven't talked about is Ghilman. The Quran also talks about servant boys that will be created for the pleasure of women and men.
Yeah, okay. I thought he was going to omit this, but he actually is honest enough to say, yes, there are girls and boys for both sexes, yeah.
Now, what you've done is you've ignored that strategically, either out of ignorance or out of
voice.
No problem. Now I'm telling you.
Be a voice.
So, if the question is if your question was, why is it the case that men have servitude of a new creation of women, that are designed explicitly and exclusively for them, then the answer is that's not the case, because actually women and men also get these ghilman, who are servant boys, who will serve them in a similar capacity as with the hur, the men. So the point here is actually based on ignorant premise. Taking a step back from the so-called equality discussion that you've tried to put forward.
What equality discussion? He said that men get 72 virgins and the women don't.
But you're saying, and I've heard this before, that there are in fact boys that are available to women that go to heaven.
Yeah, but they're also there for the men. So
okay, right.
You get the women, you get the girls, the huris, the ones with the high swelling breasts and all the rest. They're for the guys, and they get renewed as virgins after use. They are not available for the women. The women get their husbands. As far as I know, the boys in heaven are for the men, not for the women, not for the wives. The wives only get the husbands. They don't get the use of these young bodies. Well, I don't understand young bodies anyway, because everybody is supposed to be 31 with the permanent erection. So what is it that people are talking about? I don't quite understand where this would come from and why this is an issue all of a sudden. We know the description of heaven. I mean, this is quite. There's nothing untoward or secret or something. No, everybody is using the same hadiths here.
And there'll continue to remain differences and not this kind of perfection where we are all the same. There's going to be things we're going to have these differences, right? We're going to continue to have free will.
There will be differences, yes.
So if these differences continue to exist, surely at some point there's going to be a conflict.
Okay, Alex, listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully.
Society.
Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't happen.
Exactly.
No one argues. They argue in speaker's corner. That's it.
Alex, listen to me carefully. Why is there? How do you know? Here's my question. How do you know that such a concept as conflict exists?
In heaven?
Here.
Well, talk about.
We saw it as you were afraid to die.
No, hold on. One person at a time. If you want to, you can ask.
I know. I'll
Yes.
give you an example, right? Men, when it comes to females, they compete. When it comes to resources, jobs, they compete.
Okay.
There is only one for one, unless.
How do you define conflict?
Well, there is a friction where you get to a point where there is a certain resource, like a bit of land.
Okay.
You want to protect your family.
Disagreement.
A tree with apples.
No problem.
Disagreement. It does come to resources. Yeah.
Okay.
However,
not always. About ideas.
In some cases, it could be an abstract idea.
Okay, fine. Excellent. Do you know, Plato, he was the first major philosopher that I know of that he referred to a concept of universals. Universals. Now, what are universals? Universals are usually, in language, they're abstract nouns and or...
Stop it there for a moment. Okay, I think we're going off on a tangent, but it also, to be fair, that Alex went off on a bit of a tangent here. If I understand it correctly, his objection is, hey, men and women are not getting the same in heaven. That's wrong. That's all he could have said, but he waffled all over the show. And now Hijab has picked up on something, and so they're off on a tangent now from the original claim. And again, we've not heard any epistemological claims from Hijab as to why, the metaphysical, has got the same epistemic weight. Because remember, that was the first question. So we're off on a tangent here. But to be fair, Alex seems to be a bit all over the show as well.
I was just not following anymore what they were trying to say.
Yeah, no, they've gone off on a little bit here. Let's just see if it comes back to something here.
Now, why is it ironic that you have here come forward and told me that, look, conflict doesn't exist in heaven? It's because you've extrapolated a concept of conflict as per the universe in which you live in and the experiences in which you had and the commonalities or the thread you've been able to put with all the things which you consider as conflict, and you've superimposed that on another metaphysical thing, which doesn't, which you...
No.
Hold on, Alex.
Your heaven is so extremely exaggerated to say.
Are you understanding?
It's about sex.
So the point is, when you're using
conflict, suddenly we have to.
What I'm saying, when we use common noun, this is what Ibn Abbas said. Ibn Abbas said, the only thing which is similar between that which is in heaven and that which is in this world is the name. Therefore, when you bring a concept like conflict, which is, as we said, a universal, and you try and superimpose it on heaven, which is a metaphysical concept, construct, which no one has seen except for, we say, the prophets, from Muhammad in particular, etc., then what you're doing is you're applying a fallacy of some sort, because really and truly, it's of course a fallacy. Now, I'm not going to explain.
Okay, I think I understand what he's trying to say now. That this is something about the anthropomorphism of heaven. I think this is what he's trying to say. He's trying to put a barrier between what we know, our concepts here on earth in the natural world, and heaven, where he's trying to make heaven something completely different.
Yes.
So all the concepts that we know here, like conflict, like white, like all these universals, they don't necessarily exist in heaven. But this doesn't make sense, because heaven, right from the word go, is supposed to be very real. And the fact that he says, well, there's all these girls and boys, for everybody available there, is a contradiction to what he's trying to do here.
And I mean, the same thing with wine and rivers of milk and stuff. Is his claim that it's not really referring to the things that we understand here on earth? Because what he seems to want to do is draw a barrier, like you say, between the metaphysical heaven and, the physical existence plane that we're on now. But when it's talked about in the Quran, the question to ask him would be, do you think that those things that the Quran refers to when they talk about heaven or people going to heaven, are those things unlike anything here on earth? So when they use those labels, wine or rivers of milk or virgins or whatever, what are they? Are they not referring to the things that we understand here in the physical world? And if they're not, then what are they referring to? Are we supposed to understand this, given what we understand about the world here and relate it to the heaven? Is that supposed to be the message? Or if it's not, what is God supposed to be talking about here then?
Heaven, all the benefits or whatever you get in heaven is so earthly and it's so consistent with what makes us happy.
As I said to you before,
sex and money and drink.
So what? So what? So what?
Let's say so what. It doesn't matter. But
so how does that invalidate
it? When it comes to the fact that we may have some idea of a conflict, you say no. That's just some sort of
I'm telling you, the idea of conflict you've extrapolated from the world.
I'm saying if we continue to have free will, and
Alex, I don't think you understand. I want to try and break it down. It's my fault that you don't understand. It's not your fault. Our ideas that we understand. If I say the word love, yeah? Give me any abstract noun. Hate, love. Give me another abstract noun. Anything you like, yeah? Disagreement, happiness, whatever. Okay. All of that which we can understand, all of that which these words can necessarily denote or connote, must explicitly relate to my experience or your experience. Yes or no? Okay. The Prophet told us explicitly that heaven, ma khatara ala qalbi bashar. No one has experience of this place. Now, there are exceptions, like we said, Prophet Muhammad, etc. But generally, no one has experience. Now, the point is, if you haven't got experience of heaven, to speculate about the minutiae or the what happens, the details, is neither here nor there. It doesn't mean anything for me. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So if you're saying,
So, but that seems to be, as I said, that seems to be problematic. Then, if you're going to claim that what the Quran says about heaven, is that supposed to represent heaven? Yes, I agree that nobody's had the experience of heaven, and one could argue not the prophet either. But even so, can somebody give you a description of something that you haven't experienced? If an astronaut came back to Earth here and he'd been on the moon and he explained to you what it was like on the moon, would we have an understanding of what it was like on the moon, even if we hadn't experienced it ourselves? And to me, the obvious answer is yes. He could say it feels almost weightless. It feels like a 6. Imagine you jumping on here. Imagine this, that, and the other. We could have in our mind an image of what that would be like, even if we haven't experienced it. That seems to me straightforward. Maybe I'm missing something, but so I don't see his argument as being strong here at all.
No, like you said, I think this is what Alex is also picking up now, that on the one hand, he's claiming, well, it's all very lovey-dovey and supernatural and above everything else, and we can't grasp it. But then at the end of the day, you have rivers of milk and honey and sex and all that stuff, which is very, very much taken from our own perception here on Earth. And this is what Alex just said. So I think you can't, he's realizing you can't have it both ways. And this is what Hijab is trying to do. He's trying to make heaven this wonderful place. And at the same time, it's mysterious and wonderful, and you don't know anything about it. You can't know anything about it because it is metaphysical.
My idea of desire will be different there.
Therefore, we can conclude the fact that we are incapable of having any understanding of heaven.
No, I didn't say any understanding. See, that's a straw man.
When you look into it, that's what it comes to.
Alex, what I'm saying is,
we first begin with the premise that actually heaven is cool. You can have all these pleasures, and then suddenly it's all earthly pleasures. But then you take it further that we actually don't know. It's so complicated.
It's not. I didn't say it's complicated. Look, try and
unless you've had experience.
No problem. Of course.
Unless you've had experience of it, you cannot say a word.
Yeah, what I'm saying to you, listen, very explicitly what I'm saying, right? I'm explicitly telling you now that heaven is a place where we don't have any direct empirical experience with.
You have no idea.
Yes.
Of what it is.
Thank you. All right. Perfect. We have no idea. Yet the descriptions are meant to give us as much as is humanly and earth in the dunya way possible understanding of what exists there.
Even though when we enter heaven, we're going to get tweaked.
Let me give you an example. I know I've spoken of philosophical mumbo jumbo. I'm going to try and break it down to the lowest common multiple once again. Listen, if I were to tell you, if you were to meet someone, an Eskimo, I don't know if they exist in real life now. What? They do?
Yes, they exist in real life.
Okay. If I were to meet an Eskimo who's forever lived in an environment of snow, never had a television set, and always lived in an igloo, if that really, I've never seen an igloo in real life. And then I started to describe to the Eskimo, to the best of my possible ability, what sand is. I say, listen, I have language, he has language. I say, listen, sand is like snow, but actually it's a bit more grainy, And I start trying to use as much hyperbole, as much adjectives, etc. as possible to explain what sand is. We cannot assume safely that Eskimo is gonna ever understand.
Yeah, you see, this is the point. This is it's not his fault. Okay, he's deluded. He's brainwashed. This is his thinking. He doesn't understand. This is why we have science, and this is why science is so fucking accurate. This is why science is so meticulous, and this is why science is so, like I'm sorry to use the same word again, anal, about using the right word for the correct thing to describe this, that you have data, that you have all sorts of different descriptions of something before you go out and you even mention this. And this is why, yes, a scientist, no matter whether he's an Eskimo or whether he's from the Sahara, they will be able to understand, because to a scientist, for example, you can describe exactly what sand is, because all you need is the chemical, all the chemical elements that it's made out of. You can give it all the weight, the ratio, the size, the volume, and all these different sets and pieces of data that you can gather about sand, and you can then describe it using science. That is why science is so useful, because it makes things comparable. And this is what Hijab doesn't get, because for him, it's his mindset. Snow is snow and sand is sand, and somebody in the desert doesn't understand snow and vice versa. No, this was true 1,000 years ago. Today, it's no longer true.
Yeah, but also, I think what he's talking about as a lay person, so like a snowman, an Eskimo that had never seen sand, you could still give, as you said, there's a scientific way of going about it, but for two lay people who are not scientifically literate, you could still give the Eskimo a fairly good description of what sand is, that he could imagine it to be there. The fact that he hasn't experienced what sand is, he hasn't physically picked it up or seen it with his own eyes, doesn't mean that you can't give him a fairly accurate description of what it is. And he could relate to it by the description itself. And I think that's where he's kind of going, no, you can't really do that. Because he's never seen it or experienced it himself, you can't give him a good enough description. And I just disagree with that. That might be the case for something metaphysical. If you spoke to an Eskimo and you tried to explain what a unicorn was, and he'd never seen a horse, that would be much more difficult to do. But if it was something more practical, but that actually then, that's sort of problematic, potentially from a metaphysical point of view. But like you've said, and he said it, and he's agreed, that the Quran speaks about things that we do understand here on earth. So if it's talking about things like rivers of milk and honey and virgins, those are things we understand. So we can imagine exactly what that will be like in heaven. Now, if his claim is that it's nothing like here on earth, please give me the evidence, and what is it like then? And if you're just going to claim like it's nothing like on earth, but we are giving you descriptions of exactly what it would be like here on earth, then that's a contradiction.
The experience of holding sand in his hand. Now, the same thing applies now. The Quran, it does the best job in describing, in the only way it can, to people that have had certain experiences of the world, what kind of pleasure they will get in heaven. And it does so by showing all of, frankly, what's the most pleasurable? What's the most
small print? There's very small print that says, by the way, these are just kind of like analogies, because you just.
I didn't say they're metaphors.
Okay, so there's no metaphoric kind of.
No, I didn't say this. I said they are real.
You want you to tell me that the Quran is metaphorically.
I'm not saying it's metaphorical.
No, but it's either going to be explicit in what it says, or it's going to mean something else that you're telling me right now. It says something else that I just don't know.
I'm saying it's real, but you can never comprehend it. Like Allah, He's real, but you can never. لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار. The Quran says that.
If you're going to go on the basis that you're going to read something that tells you something, and you're going to turn around, I'm not going to be able to comprehend it, and then what bloody hell virtue is there in following the rest of it?
Tell the scientist that when he's now doing quantum mechanics.
But that's a far-fetched.
No, it's not far-fetched. The only reason why you consider it far-fetched, is because when I use the word science, it's your God coming out now, so you have to defend him.
I don't give a shit.
No, if that's the case.
Okay, this is rather frustrating. This is straight up dishonest. Your God coming out there. Science is nobody's God. It's not a religion. And at the moment I hear this from any apologist, I know that we're now not being intellectually honest. And once you've explained this to them once and they do it again, now they're simply being just dishonest. All you have to do is look up the definition. Everybody knows this, but this is a common Muslim, or not necessarily just Muslim, but a common theistic apologetic these days. Oh, you guys, you atheists, you've got blind faith. Your science is your God, or scientism or whatever else is your God. It's your religion. I mean, stop doing this if you want to be taken seriously. I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, I'm going to correct you on this once. If you do it again, I'm now not speaking to somebody who wants to be intellectually honest.
And the worst is, it's just a religion. Okay, is that what you're talking about? Your religion is just a religion. everything that you say is just based on faith, and we are just as bad as you are because we have facts and you don't. Oh boy, this is so hilarious.
The same fallacy.
Sorry.
Yeah, but this is the other part of the apologetic as well, to try and show the people out there, their followers, that in fact we're on a similar level. Their belief in a God is similar to our belief in the natural world, which of course is completely fallacious. But they want to equate it because it makes them feel good, and because they realize the power of and again, I don't want to use the term, but it's what they use, atheism, i.e. not believing in a God, and there's certain other beliefs that go along with that, potentially, although different atheists have got different beliefs. But they realize the power of not believing and having good reasons and evidence, which they don't have, but they want to then equate the two. Because if they can, to some of their followers, make it appear as if, hey, the Islamic belief in this case is similar to the naturalistic belief, well, now we're on the same level, and it's almost a case of a flip a coin, or maybe just a little bit will swing you one way or the other way, and that's obviously not true. And so, but that's the attempt I see being made here.
Yeah.
By the way, just to the viewers as well,
somehow seems to level the playing field.
Yeah. That's the attempt. Yeah.
Okay.
Committing. By saying because we don't understand something, it's not true, or it's invalid, or it's illogical, it doesn't exist.
I just find it strange that when the God had this opportunity to make it clear that actually, by the way, little disclaimer here, it's a bit more than that than what you think. It required someone like you to come on board and try to say, actually, Ali, you can't understand this. It's more than that. And
So what's the problem? The Prophet told us that.
No, but it's your interpretation.
No, the Prophet said,
very clearly.
What does it say? Have you read the scriptures?
No, but I've heard it from you, right?
Okay, no, but it says in the Quran. It says in the Quran. It says mutashabih wa ghayra mutashabih. Mushtabihan wa ghayra mutashabih. It says that some things are going to be similar to what you've experienced, and some things are going to be completely dissimilar.
And how do we tell the difference?
What's the point?
How do we tell the difference? Where in the Quran does it say this? You can tell the difference between this one and that one. Please show me the verses that say that, or the hadiths for that matter, that clearly tell you what's the difference. If you're talking about things that we can experience or we've got some knowledge of in this world, then surely an all-knowing God would expect us to think that that's going to be the same in heaven. So it just seems like it's, I don't know what you'd call it off the top of my head, but it just seems like a hand-waving thing here. Hey, some things will be the same, some won't. You just accept it. That's the way it is. No, I'm not just going to accept it. How do you know which is which? You're making the claim. Please explain why you believe that and where do you get the reference from?
Al-An'am or Al-A'raf, chapter 6 or chapter 7.
And if you for the same Eskimo example you gave, if you went to the North Pole and you saw a man who has 70 virgins, who's living above some river, fruits, and he's having a great time, are you going to tell him you're in heaven? He's in heaven.
No, man. We believe in a realm which is above and beyond the worldly realm.
He doesn't seek anything else.
Heaven for us denotes a place which is a after-death experience. So he's not in heaven from our perspective. He's in the world.
I think you also need to take into account the alternative to heaven according to Islam. Because you either have heaven, which is a really good,
you have hell.
You have hell, it's a really bad
place.
And you don't want to be in hell. You want to be in heaven.
Absolutely. The thesis of Islam is most compelling to me from a logical perspective.
Oh, logical.
Yeah, rationally.
So all these words, excellent.
And also because I believe I'm predisposed to believe in a God.
Oh, you're predisposed. So you're saying that some may not have that?
No, everyone has this.
Everyone has this. But in your case, it's Islam, right?
There you go.
No, look, Islam is submission to God, right?
Yeah.
That one there, immediately, that needs to be challenged straight away. That whole thing that everybody has this belief in a God. Obviously, I don't know, is this a Christian, this other guy? It seemed to be. He suggested he was a Christian, in which case he's not going to challenge that. He's just going to accept everybody has a belief in a God. Obviously, where's your evidence for that? In fact, I feel like we've got counter evidence to that.
In a nutshell, heaven, according to Muslims, is a place where you get everything you want, and you will not want that which you cannot have as per the morals of Islam. So you can't have sex with animals or children or whatever. Done. Hell is where you get an eternal punishment forever. Now, heaven and hell are the recompense, the ultimate recompense of people's having gone through some kind of test in life and then being judged and assessed by the all-knowing, the all-wise, which we believe is God. That's the thing. Now, we don't know exactly what's in heaven.
Can you clarify this or give us a little bit more info? He claims that hell is the eternal punishment. Some Muslims I speak to say that's not the case, that you might go there for a short while, then you might not, you may not stay there, etc. Some people who are not Muslims might get judged and not go to hell. So there seems to be all different views on this. Can you sort of give any thoughts on this?
This is true. There's all different views on this because it's not clear. There is a dubious sentence in the Quran which says you will taste hell, but it should be in the conditional sense. You would taste hell if you wouldn't be a Muslim. But because the Quran doesn't do that, it says that you will taste hell, then people say, well, what happens is Muslims first go to hell, and there they stay an appropriate amount of time, which is commensurate with their sins that they committed in life, just to have a taste of hell. And then they are taken out, they are saved and put into heaven so that they will even more greatly appreciate the wonders of heaven. But not everybody interprets that sentence like this. People say, yeah, it's intended to be theoretical, that this is a warning for the non-believers so that they will go to hell for their eternal punishment, and our belief excludes us from this. So there's different ways of interpretation.
Right, okay, cool.
How it functions, I can't give you details. Right, the Prophet told us that, but we do know some things which potentially we could expect, but it's nothing that we can envisage in a full sense. Make sense?
Yeah. Cool, man. Great. Thanks.
Okay. So not the best video. I think Alex wasn't clear. Obviously, Hijab made his biggest claim in the beginning was never substantiated, which is that his epistemic weights the epistemic weight is equal or similar to, these metaphysical claims are equal or similar to, a quantum physicist looking at, subatomic particles. So I never heard anything about that. So, and then it just sort of went off from there.